Kate Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and watched the alien delegates argue. The council chamber was huge, with curved walls that stretched up into darkness. Hundreds of different species filled the seats, their voices echoing off the walls. In a dozen languages, Kate understood every word through her translator device, and she wished she didn't. The Altonian speaker stood at the center podium, his blue skin gleaming under the bright lights. His forearms moved as he talked, gesturing toward the holographic display that showed star maps and trade routes. "The human proposal is emotional nonsense," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "They want us to risk our ships and crews for refugees who contribute nothing to galactic society." Kate felt her hands tighten into fists. The refugees he talked about were families fleeing the Zephyrian Empire's attacks. Millions of people forced from their homes, living in overcrowded camps with little food or medicine. All Kate had asked for was safe corridors so aid ships could reach them. The Crystalline Collective's representative rose next. Her body looked like living glass, reflecting the chamber lights in rainbow colors. "Humans have been members of this council for only 15 years, she said. "They lack the wisdom that comes from thousands of years of civilization. Their suggestions show they do not understand how galactic politics work." Other delegates nodded in agreement. The hegemony minister, a tall creature with gray skin and 6 eyes, spoke up. "Perhaps humans should observe and learn before trying to guide species far older and wiser than themselves." Kate had heard these same words hundreds of times before. Every time she proposed helping someone, they called her emotional. Every time she suggested a new solution, they said humans were too young to understand. Every time she tried to speak, they reminded her that humanity was the newest member of the council, but humans weren't just observers anymore. Earth had colonies on 47 worlds now. Human ships protected the trade routes. Human doctors treated diseases that had killed millions. Human engineers kept the space stations running. Human farmers fed hungry populations across the galaxy. The debate continued for hours. Kate watched delegate after delegate stand up and explain why helping the refugees was impossible. Too expensive, too dangerous, too complicated. The Zephyrian Empire was too powerful to anger. The refugee camps were a neutral space where the council had no authority. Finally, the vote came. The massive display screen showed the results as they appeared. 700 votes against the aid proposal. 43 votes in favor. Kate's single vote for humanity flashed alone at the bottom of the screen. The Altonian speaker smiled as he announced the results. "The council has spoken. The refugee situation will be handled through existing diplomatic channels." Kate knew what that meant. Nothing would be done. The refugees would stay in their camps, and more would die from hunger and disease. As the session ended, delegates began filing out of the chamber. Many stopped to chat with friends from other species. Some laughed about the day's debates. None of them looked at Kate as she gathered her papers. Ambassador Veltar from the Crystalline Collective approached her table. "You seem upset, Human Morrison," he said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "You must understand that we cannot simply act on emotion. These decisions require careful thought." "Careful thought," Kate repeated. "Like the careful thought that went into the trade restrictions you voted on last month." Veltar's crystalline features shifted slightly. "Those restrictions were necessary. Human colonies have been disrupting established trade patterns. Your species grows too quickly and takes too many risks." Kate stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "Those restrictions will hurt millions of people on human worlds, families who need food and medicine. But I suppose that's just emotion talking." "You prove my point," Veltar said. "You think of individual families instead of the greater galactic economy. This is why humans need more time to mature politically." Kate walked away without answering. She had heard enough lectures about human immaturity to last a lifetime. As she left the chamber, she pulled out her communication device and sent a priority message to Captain Rick Hayes, commander of the Human Defense Fleet. "Rick, we need to talk. Emergency priority." The reply came, back within minutes. "On my way to Station Nexus." What happened this time? Kate made her way through the station's corridors toward the docking bay where Rick would arrive. Station Nexus was like a small city floating in space. Thousands of beings from dozens of species lived and worked here. The walls were covered with artwork from different worlds. Music from various cultures played softly in the background, but Kate noticed something as she walked. The maintenance crews fixing broken equipment were mostly human. The medical teams treating sick visitors were mostly human. The engineers working on the station's power systems were mostly human. Even the food service workers preparing meals from different worlds were mostly human. Humans did the hard work that kept the station running. They took the dangerous jobs and worked the long hours. They volunteered for missions that other species found too risky. And in return, they got 1 vote out of 800, and lectures about being too emotional. Rick Hayes arrived 20 minutes later. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. His uniform showed the wear of someone who spent more time in space than on solid ground. 3 other ship captains came with him, all looking as exhausted as Rick. "Let me guess," Rick said, as they found a quiet corner in the station's observation deck. "They voted down another aid proposal and told you to be more mature about it." Kate nodded. "The Zephyrian refugee crisis. They won't even allow safe passage for medical ships." Captain Lisa Park, one of Rick's officers, shook her head. "We've been protecting their shipping lanes for 2 years, while they debate whether refugees deserve help. My crew has taken casualties defending alien cargo ships, but they won't lift a finger to save dying families." "It gets worse," Kate said. She pulled up the voting records on her tablet. "They're planning new restrictions on human expansion. Limits on how many colonies we can establish and what resources we can use. A vote is scheduled for next week." Rick studied the data, his expression growing darker. "They want to keep us contained while using our ships and people to maintain their empire. The Altonian delegate actually said that human expansion makes other species nervous." Kate continued. "We're growing too fast and taking too many risks. He suggested we should focus on improving our existing colonies instead of establishing new ones." Captain Park laughed bitterly. Easy for him to say. The Altonians have had the same borders for 3,000 years. They've never had to worry about finding new homes for growing populations. Kate looked out through the observation deck's windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling dangerous borders and defending alien worlds. Human doctors were treating alien diseases. Human engineers were building alien infrastructure. Human diplomats were negotiating alien disputes. And here in the council chamber, human voices were ignored and human ideas were dismissed. "I'm tired of this," Kate said quietly. 15 years of being treated like children while doing adult work. Maybe it's time to stop playing their game. Rick nodded slowly. "What did you have in mind?" Kate turned back to face her friends. "I think it's time Earth reconsidered its membership in this council. All of it." Kate Morrison stood in her quarters aboard Station Nexus, staring at the quantum communication array. The blue light indicated a secure connection to Earth. On the screen, 3 faces looked back at her with serious expressions. President Lisa Turner sat behind her desk in the White House. Her gray hair was pulled back neatly, but Kate could see the stress lines around her eyes. Next to her, Admiral John Parker wore his Navy uniform with rows of medals across his chest. Secretary of Defense Carl Brooks completed the group, his thick hands folded on the table. "Kate, we've read your report," President Turner said. Use what you really think about the situation. Kate took a deep breath. Madam President, they're never going to treat us as equals. 15 years of membership, and we still get one vote while doing most of the work. They block our expansion, ignore our proposals, and lecture us about being too emotional. Meanwhile, our people risk their lives every day protecting their interests. Admiral Parker leaned forward. What about the trade restrictions they're planning? They'll pass next week, Kate said. The preliminary vote was 812 in favor, with only human colonies opposing. They want to limit our resource extraction and slow our expansion. They say we're disrupting the galactic economy. Secretary Brooks shook his head. Disrupting their monopolies, more likely. Our agricultural techniques have increased food production on 17 worlds. Our medical advances have saved millions of lives. Our engineering innovations have improved efficiency across the galaxy. And they resent us for it, Kate said. The older species see us as upstarts who need to be kept in line. They want the benefits of our contributions without giving us any real voice in decisions. President Turner was quiet for a long moment. Kate, what are you suggesting? Kate felt her heart beat faster. I think we should withdraw from the Galactic Council. Completely. No more human representatives. No more human aid. No more human protection for their trade routes. The three leaders on Earth exchanged glances. Admiral Parker spoke first. Kate, that would mean recalling every human ship from Council operations. Thousands of vessels protecting supply lines, conducting medical missions, maintaining infrastructure. No, Kate said. It would also mean bringing home all our specialists and advisors. The doctors treating the vegan plague, the engineers maintaining the jump gates, the agricultural experts helping feed border worlds. Secretary Brooks pulled up a data pad. We have over 50,000 people embedded in Council operations across the galaxy. They've been there so long that most alien worlds depend on them completely, which is exactly the point, Kate said. They take our people for granted while treating us like junior partners. Maybe it's time they learned what the galaxy looks like without human help. President Turner rubbed her temples. The consequences would be severe, not just for them, but for us. We'd be isolated, cut off from galactic trade and cooperation. Are we really part of it now? Kate asked. Or are we just providing free labor for species that look down on us? Earth's colonies are strong enough to stand alone. We have our own trade networks, our own technology, our own resources. Admiral Parker studied his tablet. Captain Hayes sent me a report yesterday. His fleet has been protecting Zephyrian supply convoys, while the Zephyrians expand into neutral territories. The same territories where those refugees are suffering. He's starting to ask why human lives should be risked for alien aggression. Because the Council orders it, Kate said bitterly. And when we question those orders, they remind us that we're too young to understand galactic politics. The discussion continued for an hour. They talked about trade consequences, diplomatic isolation, and the humanitarian crisis that might follow human withdrawal. But in the end, the decision was clear. We'll put it to a vote in Congress, President Turner said. But I think I know what the answer will be. Americans don't like being pushed around, and we don't like our people being treated as second-class citizens. The connection ended, and Kate sat alone in her quarters. She knew she had just started something that would change the galaxy forever. 3 days later, the results came back from Earth. Congress had voted overwhelmingly to withdraw from the Galactic Council. The margin was 437 to 12 in the House, and 96 to 4 in the Senate. Kate sent immediate messages to all human ships and personnel in Council space. The orders were simple. Return to human territory within 72 hours. Captain Rick. Hayes received the message while his fleet was escorting a supply convoy to the Altonian border. He read it twice, then called his senior officers to a meeting. "You heard right," he told them. "We're going home, all of us." Captain Lisa Park smiled for the first time in weeks. "What about the convoy?" "Not our problem anymore," Rick said. "Send a message to the Altonian fleet. Tell them they're on their own from now on." The recall order spread through human space like wildfire. On 17 different worlds, human medical teams packed their equipment and prepared to leave. Dr. Maria Santos had been working for 3 years to develop a cure for the vegan plague. She looked at her research notes one last time, then deleted all the files from the alien computer systems. Engineer Tony Mitchell was halfway through upgrading the fusion reactor that powered the Centauri trade hub. He shut down his tools, gathered his human team, and walked away. The half-finished reactor would never work without human expertise to complete it. Diplomat Greg Foster was in the middle of peace negotiations between 2 warring species in the Outer Rim. He stood up during a crucial session, announced that humanity was withdrawing from all council affairs, and left the negotiating table. The alien delegates stared after him in shock. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. Human agricultural advisors abandoned their projects. Human engineers left critical infrastructure unfinished. Human teachers stopped their classes. Human doctors closed their clinics. The alien response was swift and predictable. The Altonian fleet commander sent an angry message to Rick Hayes, demanding that human ships return to their escort duties. Rick deleted the message without reading it completely. The Crystalline Collective's ambassador tried to contact Kate Morrison, insisting that human obligations to the Council could not be simply ignored. Kate's response was brief. "Humanity has no obligations to organizations that treat us as inferior members." On the Council floor, delegates called emergency sessions to address the human withdrawal. The hegemony minister declared it an act of childish rebellion that would be forgotten. Within days, the Zephyrian representative suggested that good riddance to troublesome humans who never understood their place. But in the maintenance sections of Station Nexus, alien technicians stared at control panels they had never learned to operate. Human engineers had handled all the complex systems for so long that other species had forgotten how they worked. On medical ships throughout the galaxy, alien doctors frantically searched databases for treatment protocols that human physicians had developed. The vegan plague was spreading faster than ever, and the humans who understood it best were gone. Captain Hayes watched his fleet jump to hyperspace, leaving the alien convoy behind. For the first time in years, he felt like he was serving Earth's interests instead of alien politics. Kate Morrison packed her belongings and prepared to leave Station Nexus forever. As she walked through the corridors one last time, she noticed something interesting. Alien maintenance crews were already struggling with equipment that had been working perfectly when humans operated it. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson about taking human contributions for granted. 1 week after the human withdrawal, Captain Rick Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the news feeds from across the galaxy. The reports painted a picture of growing chaos that even he had not expected. "Sir, incoming transmission." From the Altonian border sector, his communications officer said. Rick nodded. "Put it on screen." The face that appeared belonged to Commander Zektal of the Altonian Defense Fleet. His blue skin looked pale, and his forearms trembled slightly. "Captain Hayes, we need immediate assistance. The Zephyrian Empire has launched attacks on 3 of our border worlds. Our ships cannot maintain defensive positions without human support vessels." Rick kept his expression neutral. "I'm sorry, Commander. Humanity is no longer part of Council military operations. You'll need to contact Council headquarters for assistance. The Council fleet is already engaged, Zektal said desperately. We need human medical ships and supply vessels. Our logistics network is failing without your support crews. That's not our problem anymore, Rick said. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. What's the latest from intelligence? Lieutenant Sam Rogers pulled up a holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Red warning lights blinked across dozens of systems. The Zephyrian Empire has moved faster than anyone expected, sir, without our peacekeeping forces to slow them. Down, they've taken control of 7 neutral systems in the past 5 days. Rick studied the map. For years, human ships had patrolled the neutral zones, preventing exactly this kind of aggression. The Zephyrians had always been aggressive, but they had moved slowly when human forces might intervene. Now they were advancing, like wildfire. What about the refugee situation? Rick asked. Getting worse every day, sir. A vegan plague has spread to 4 more worlds since our medical teams withdrew. Conservative estimates put the death toll at over 2 million in the past week. Rick felt a knot in his stomach. Those were people dying because human doctors were no longer there to help them. But he reminded himself that human doctors had been there for 3 years, and the aliens had still voted to restrict human colonies and ignore refugee aid proposals. Another transmission came in, this time from Station Nexus. The face on screen belonged to Station Administrator Yathuk, a tall gray creature with 6 eyes. All 6 eyes looked tired and stressed. Captain Hayes, Station Nexus is experiencing critical system failures. Our power grid is unstable, our life support systems are malfunctioning, and our computer networks are crashing daily. We need human engineers to return immediately. Rick almost smiled. Have you tried asking the Crystalline Collective? They have thousands of years of experience. Surely they can handle some basic maintenance. Please, Yathuk said. This is not about politics. People are dying. The station supports over 50,000 beings from dozens of species. Then perhaps the Council should have thought of that before dismissing human proposals and restricting human expansion, Rick said. Good luck with your repairs. He ended that transmission too and walked to the observation deck. Through the windows, he could see Earth growing larger as his ship approached home. It had been 3 years since he had seen the blue world where humanity began. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the situation continued to deteriorate. Trade routes that had functioned smoothly for decades were now plagued with problems. Navigation beacons maintained by human technicians went dark one by one. Ships got lost in hyperspace without the human design. Guidance systems. The great agricultural worlds were facing their own crisis. Human farming specialists had spent years developing new crop varieties and growing techniques. Without them, yields dropped dramatically. On Kepler Prime, the grain harvest failed completely when the modified crops required care that local farmers did not understand. Ambassador Veltar of the Crystalline Collective sat in his office on the Council World, staring at reports that grew worse every hour. His crystalline body reflected the red warning lights from his computer screen like a disco ball of disaster. A aide rushed into his office carrying a datapad. Sir, we've lost contact with 17 Council installations in the past 2 days. Their human support staff maintained all communication equipment. Veltar's crystalline features shifted in what humans would recognize as distress. What about backup systems? The backup systems were also maintained by humans, sir. Most of our technical staff don't know how to operate equipment they've never had to touch. In the medical district of New Geneva, Dr. Sarah Kim was one of the few alien physicians who had worked closely with human doctors. She now found herself overwhelmed as the only person in the sector who understood human-developed treatment protocols. Doctor, we have 50 new plague victims in the emergency ward, her assistant said. The human treatment programs aren't working. anymore. Dr. Kim looked at her computer screen in frustration. The human doctors had developed sophisticated treatment algorithms that adapted to each patient's condition. But the programs required constant updates and modifications that only human doctors knew how to make. Try the standard Altonian protocols, she said, knowing they would be far less effective. On the Zephyrian border, what had been a slowly advancing conflict became a full-scale invasion. The Zephyrian fleet moved from system to system, meeting only token resistance. The Council's military response was hampered by ships that could not maintain formation without human coordination vessels. Admiral Thakmer of the Council fleet sent increasingly desperate messages to military headquarters. His ships were breaking down faster than his repair crews could fix them. Weapon systems designed by human engineers required maintenance procedures that only humans understood. Back on Earth, President Lisa Turner watched the galactic news feeds with mixed emotions. The humanitarian crisis troubled her deeply, but the reports also proved what she had long suspected. The galaxy had become completely dependent on human expertise while treating humans as junior partners. Madam President, Secretary Brooks said, entering her office with the latest intelligence reports. We're getting requests for help from 47 different council worlds. Some are offering significant concessions in exchange for aid. What kind of concessions? President Turner asked. Full voting rights, permanent council seats, and some are even offering to withdraw from the trade restriction proposals. The Altonian government has offered to support human expansion into 3 unclaimed systems. President Turner nodded thoughtfully. The aliens were finally beginning to understand what they had lost. But understanding and respect were 2 different things. Captain Hayes completed his approach to Earth orbit and received docking clearance for Luna Station. As his ship settled into the docking bay, he reflected on what he had seen. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about the difference between civilization and infrastructure. For centuries, the older species had built an impressive political structure. They had councils and treaties, laws and traditions. But underneath all the politics, it was human hands and minds that kept everything working. Human doctors who understood diseases. Human engineers who maintained equipment. Human farmers who grew food. Human soldiers who provided security. Human diplomats who negotiated peace. The aliens had been so focused on maintaining their political superiority that they had forgotten who actually made their society function. Now, with humans gone, the impressive political structure was collapsing like a building without a foundation. The irony was not lost on Rick that the same species who had called humans too immature for galactic politics were now begging for help like children who had broken their toys. As he stepped off his ship onto Luna Station, Rick wondered how long it would take for the aliens to realize that cooperation required respect, not just need. 3 months after humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, a small diplomatic ship approached Earth orbit. The vessel bore the symbols of 7 different alien species, but it moved slowly and awkwardly through space, without human navigation. Specialists, even simple space travel had become difficult for many council worlds. Kate Morrison, now serving as Earth's Minister of Galactic Affairs, watched the ship dock at Luna Station through her office window. She had been expecting this visit for weeks. The reports from across the galaxy painted a clear picture. The Galactic Council was dying. President Lisa Turner joined Kate in the observation lounge as the alien delegation disembarked. Leading the group was High Counselor Zaxt Etch of the Hegemony, his tall gray form moving with less dignity than Kate remembered. Behind him came representatives from the Altonian government, the Crystalline Collective, and 4 other major species. They looked desperate, President Turner observed. Kate nodded. They should be. Half their member worlds have either fallen to invasion or descended into civil war. The rest are begging for bilateral aid agreements with us. The delegation was escorted to a modest conference room in Luna Station's diplomatic sector. Kate had chosen the location carefully. No grand chambers or impressive displays of power. Just a simple room with a table and chairs. High Counselor Zaxith sat across from Kate, his 6 eyes showing fatigue. Minister Morrison, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Kate folded her hands on the table. What can humanity do for you? Counselor? Zaxith exchanged glances with the other delegates. We come to discuss humanity's return to the Galactic Council. We are prepared to offer significant concessions. What kind of concessions? Kate asked, though she already knew from the preliminary messages. Ambassador Veltar of the Crystalline Collective leaned forward, his transparent body catching the room's light. Full voting rights for all human colonies. Permanent seats on the Security Council. Complete withdrawal of all trade restrictions. Control over humanitarian operations throughout the galaxy, added the Altonian representative. Your people would have authority over all medical and relief missions. Kate listened politely as they outlined their offers. Everything that humanity had requested for 15 years was suddenly on the table. The same aliens who had dismissed human proposals as emotional nonsense were now begging for human leadership. These are generous offers, Kate said finally. But I'm afraid humanity is no longer interested in council membership. The silence that followed was deafening. Zaxith's gray skin grew even paler. Minister Morrison, surely we can reach an agreement. The galaxy needs human expertise. The galaxy needed human expertise 3 months ago, Kate replied. But the council voted to restrict our expansion and dismiss our proposals. You made it clear that humans were junior partners at best. Veltar's crystalline features shifted. Desperately, we made mistakes. We underestimated humanity's contributions to galactic civilization. We are willing to admit our errors. Kate stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Earth below. Counselor, admitting mistakes is different from learning from them. The council system is fundamentally broken. It's based on species hierarchy rather than cooperation. The Altonian delegate spoke up. What would humanity require for reconciliation? Kate turned back to face them. The Galactic Council, as it currently exists, must be dissolved. We're not interested in reforming a system that treats some species as inherently superior to others. The delegates looked shocked. Zaxith stammered, You're asking us to abandon thousands of years of galactic governance. I'm telling you that. Humanity will not participate in systems that rank species by age or perceived sophistication, Kate said. We're willing to work with individual worlds and species, but only as equals. President Turner entered the room at that moment, flanked by Admiral John Parker and Secretary Carl Brooks. The alien delegates stood respectfully, recognizing Earth's top leadership. Gentlemen, President Turner said, taking a seat at the head of the table. I understand you're here to discuss humanity's role in galactic affairs. We're hoping to restore the partnership that has benefited everyone, Zaxith said carefully. President Turner smiled. The partnership where humans provided most of the work, while aliens made all the decisions. I don't think that arrangement served humanity very well. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The aliens offered everything they could think of. Economic partnerships, military alliances, technology sharing agreements. They promised humans would never again be treated as junior members. But Kate and the Earth delegation remained firm. The old council system was finished. If alien worlds wanted human cooperation, they would need to build something new. On the 4th day, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The representative from Kepler Prime, a small agricultural world, stood up during the session. My world has been working directly with human colonies for the past month, she said. We have a bilateral agreement for food production and medical care. It works better than anything the Council ever provided. Other delegates began to murmur. Several smaller worlds had also made direct agreements with humanity after their council support disappeared. Kate seized the moment. This is what we're proposing. A loose confederation of independent worlds working together voluntarily. No species hierarchies, no voting based on age or size. Equal partnerships based on mutual respect. The alien delegates spent hours debating among themselves. Some of the older, more powerful species were reluctant to give up their privileged positions. But the smaller worlds that had suffered most from the Council's collapse were eager for any solution. Finally, Zaxt spoke for the group. We need time to consult with our governments. This would require fundamental changes to galactic governance. Take all the time you need, Kate said. But understand that humanity is moving forward with or without Council participation. We already have partnership agreements with 37 worlds. As the alien delegation prepared to leave, Veltar approached Kate privately. Minister Morrison, may I ask what happened to the refugee camps in the neutral zones? Kate's expression softened slightly. Human medical ships have been providing aid directly to the refugee worlds. We're working with local governments to establish permanent settlements. The camps are being closed as families find new homes. Veltar nodded slowly. Without council approval? Without council interference, Kate corrected. When you remove politics from humanitarian work, it's amazing how quickly problems can be solved. 6 months later, Kate stood in the same observation. Lounge on Luna Station, but the view had changed dramatically. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked regularly at the station. The new Galactic Cooperation Alliance had grown to include over 200 worlds. Captain Rick Hayes, now Admiral Hayes, commanded joint task forces with alien allies who had chosen partnership over domination. Human and alien crews worked side by side, sharing knowledge and responsibilities equally. The old Galactic Council still existed, but with less than half its original membership. Many worlds had discovered that direct cooperation worked better than Council bureaucracy. The Council's remaining members spent most of their time dealing with internal conflicts and resource shortages. A young cadet approached Kate as she watched the busy space lanes around Earth. Minister Morrison, do you think we'll ever have a single galactic government again? Kate smiled, watching a joint human-alien patrol ship launch from the station. We already do, Cadet. We just built it better this time. The galaxy had learned that true cooperation couldn't be built on contempt or hierarchy. It required mutual respect, shared responsibility, and the understanding that wisdom came from many sources, not just age or tradition. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy through force or politics. They had simply refused to accept an inferior position while contributing the most to galactic civilization. In doing so, they had forced the galaxy to build something better, something based on equality rather than superiority. The old order had crumbled, but from its ruins rose something stronger, fairer, and more sustainable. A galaxy where species were judged by their actions and contributions, not their age or perceived sophistication. And at the center of it all, the young species. That had been dismissed as too emotional and immature had become the foundation for a better tomorrow.